I know no one will believe me, but that's why I'm posting this here and not telling people in real life. If I did, I would be institutionalized like I almost was last time. It's my duty to warn you, or at least I think it is. It seems like the right thing to do anyway. Maybe if the event can be stopped, the cycle will stop. I've made this post last year, but I don't know if you could have gotten it or remembered it. It's been 2016 for 4 years, for me at least. It's like the movie Groundhog Day, but for a full year. I know you'll ask what will happen this year, but I honestly don't know, save for one event. All events from everyday stuff to world events are different each time, except for this one occurrence. This one occurrence is an attack on a major city, and it will claim 1,203 lives. It will happen June 6th, 1:50 PM EST. These details remain the same in every attack, but the location and method of attack changes each time. First, it was a chemical attack in Seattle. The second time, a series of bombings and shootings in Berlin. The third time, also a series of shootings and bombings, but in London. The fourth one was a plane crash, like 9/11, in Toronto. And the fifth has yet to come. An obscure group allied with IS will claim responsibility, but I'm doubtful of that narrative. Technology for me hasn't progressed in 4 years. I haven't aged as far as I can tell. Neither has anyone I know. I don't know what to do. I just go to work, hang out with friends, and try to enjoy my life. But then the attack happens. The world economy crashes, and increasingly totalitarian measures are taken by governments. Boots will be on the ground in the Middle East. I've lost my job 3 out of 4 times and had to work in factories and barely scrape by. After I go to sleep on New Year's, I awake again in 2016. I don't expect anyone to believe me until it happens. I know I wouldn't believe it. So screen cap this post. Enjoy the luxury while it lasts. Stay out of major cities. Hey guys, I have a story to tell. You probably won't believe me, and frankly, I'm done trying to convince people. It was about 3 weeks ago. I was on Google looking for some funny sites to look at. I found my way to an image board. Everyone on the board spoke in extremely cryptic nonsense. They said things like, "Heal, I saw them tonight. Holding's hand, we are up and high, 999-24028, the king come down." That was one phrase that was used frequently. The king come down. At first, I thought it was spam because of the number strings that preceded it, but its use was way too frequent and erratic to be spam. There would be typos, and the numbers didn't appear to be random. I decided, screw it, I'll see what's going on this site. I posted in what appeared to be a random board, much like B. There were no discernible theme among the images and posts. I said, "Hello, I'm new, and I was looking to start a funny thread. Ask them to post their funniest pictures." That was the first time it started. I remember the first reply very clearly. It said, "Good to see you, join the help, help." From there it got strange. I was told to ignore the grafts. I assumed this was some sort of in-joke. From there, they began to speak like crazy people, posting seemingly random numbers and letters, characters from many languages. A few seemed Russian and Middle Eastern, as well as Chinese and Korean characters. I had no idea what was going on. Then I saw the phrase again. Numbers, followed by "the king come down." Following that, my power cut off. Complete blackout. Freaked me out. I checked the fuses and saw the switches had just flipped. Flicking them back up, the power went back on. When I returned to my PC, there was an image on the screen of a young boy. He was Caucasian, no older than 10. I sat down, creeped out but feeling curious. The boy smiled and appeared to speak, but I couldn't hear anything. My speakers were on, so I turned up the volume. I could only just barely hear what he was saying. It was a hushed whisper. I turned the volume up full, and it was still only a faint whisper. His lips moved slowly. I pushed my head closer to try and figure out what he said. Then, he shouted loudly, a booming and terrifying voice screaming at me like a demonic god. The image had changed. The boy was crying, his eyes bleeding heavily as white arms tore the skin from his face. The power cut out again. Again, it was the fuses. When I got my power back, everything was normal. My PC booted up normally, and nothing creepy happened. Then, I started receiving the emails. They were extremely cryptic and filled with random numbers, much like the image board post. I got an email that was in regular English too. It said this: "Just pass it on. Please, just pass it on." I didn't know what it meant. I got up to get a drink and froze in fear. From my ceiling hung a man, his body gently swinging. On my wall, written in dry blood, were the words, "The king come down." I blinked, and the sight was gone. For weeks this continued. I went back to the image board. I was sure I was going out of my mind. Just about ready to commit myself to an asylum, I read a post in coherent English that said something like, "Pass on the king, pass on the king." The thread forward before I could even get to it. I went to make a new thread, and when I began typing, the words in my mind were not what appeared in the box. My fingers typed words by their own volition. I typed two things: gibberish and 4918484, the king come down. Then somehow I realized I was passing it on. The crazy hallucination stopped. I was good. I learned to be safe. I'm sorry. 449-19174, the king come down. I want to tell you a story, X. It's the story of a man. You see, my great-grandma was a real nice old lady. She had a nice little old lady house. We used to go there a lot before she passed away several years ago, and my grandparents tore it down to build a new house for themselves on top. One thing I distinctly remember was her attic. Boy, was it scary. It was dark. Only one light bulb would work, and you had to be real careful because there was a lot of exposed insulation. So if you stepped off the boards to get around, you'd probably fall straight through the ceiling into the room below. But it wasn't so much the atmosphere of the attic, the fact it was dark, dusty, and smelled a little weird. It was the story my uncle and my dad used to tell me about the attic. And now, I'm going to tell you. A very long time ago, when my grandpa was just a little boy, they moved into this house. It was nice. 2 bedrooms, a nice bathroom, dining room, kitchen. My great-grandparents made a very decent living. My great-grandfather owned a very successful body shop, and my great-grandmother sold Avon. One day my grandpa was playing in the living room when there was a knock at the door. He answered, and there stood a man. He was wearing a nice suit, holding a nice hat against his chest with a polite smile on his face. "Hello there, Junior," he said. "Is your father home?" My great-grandfather approached the door, suspicious. "If you're selling anything, I'm not interested, thanks," he said, before trying to close the door. But no, this stranger interrupted with a start. No, I promise I'm no salesman. I'd just like to talk if you wouldn't mind." "What about?" my grandfather asked. "I was wondering if I could take a look in your attic. You see, I used to live here and it would really bring back some memories." The man was nervous, but my great-grandfather wasn't about to fall for any con man. "Sorry, sir, my wife's about to finish dinner. Not interested." So he shut the door and ushered my young grandfather away. A day passed, and it was another hot summer day. My great-grandmother was fixing my grandpa lunch when she heard a knock. "Wallace, could you get the door?" she called to my great-grandpa, who sighed and obeyed his wife. It was the man again. "Now see here, mister, I already told you, I don't want some stranger in my house. You leave me and my family alone before you upset my son and wife. And if you upset my son and wife, I think there's going to be some trouble." "Please, sir," the man pleaded, wringing his hands. "It'll only take a moment. I absolutely must get up there, if even for 10 minutes. This time, my grandfather didn't give him the liberty of a goodbye, only a slammed door. A few days passed. Peaceful playing, working, the life of your average Canadian upper-middle-class family took place as usual. My great-grandfather, great-great-grandmother, and grandfather sat eating dinner one evening. Again, a knock on the door. It sounded important. "I swear if it's that asshole asking to get in our attic again, I'll be tuning his clock but good," my great-grandpa muttered, getting up. "Wallace, please, nothing in front of little Jim," my great-grandmother cried. It was the man again. He was not, however, alone. He was with another man who looked similar. "Now, before you chase us away, please understand, we're brothers, and we absolutely must speak with you," he said before my great-grandfather could curse him out up and down. "Well, spit it out then, man. You've gone and interrupted my supper after a long day's work, and this had better be good," my grandfather threatened. "Tell me, sir, have you ever heard strange noises in your house? Scratching, shuffling, maybe even light moaning from your attic?" the new man asked calmly. My grandfather turned stone cold. His son, my grandpa, had often whined of scratching and other sounds, to which both his parents attributed to maybe mice. "Maybe we have, maybe we haven't. Why do you ask?" he answered, coolly, crossing his arms. The men at the door exchanged worried glances. "If only you'd let us come up to your attic. You could come if you like, but it would be better if you told your son to go to his room, your wife to the kitchen, and for us men to go upstairs." So my great-grandfather told my grandpa to go play, asked his wife to clear the table, and led the men up into the dark attic. They used it for only storage. There were no real reasons to come up here, ever. The two men looked around. They knocked on the wood of the walls in the attic in various different spots. Knock knock, hollow. Knock knock, hollow. Knock knock, not hollow. My great-grandpa froze as they both nodded at one another before turning to my great-grandfather. Now, sir, please believe us when I say we'll pay for any damages that need to be fixed, and that what we're about to do may be very shocking, maybe even frightening to you, so you may very well not want to see what's about to happen. My great-grandfather pondered right then and there about turning his heel and waiting downstairs. But no, he had to be the man and stay for his family's sake. "Go ahead, then. What's in there?" he asked. He wished he hadn't. The two men pulled at the boards, peeling away the old wood fairly easily. My great-grandfather felt vicious bile build up in his stomach and throat. The smell. His body was frail and gnarled. His skin was a ghostly white. His bared teeth yellow as freshly boiled sweet corn. His eyes were open, glazed over and staring. The pupils were milky. He was blind. The white were barely that. Instead, they were bloodshot to a point that was almost unbelievable. His fingernails resembled long, round talons. Horror filled my great-grandfather as the two men bowed their heads. "It's him," said one. The other only sighed and covered his nose with his sleeve. This thing, this remnant of a once living man, was dead, but freshly. That was when my great-grandfather had reached his boiling point. "Now you had both better explain to me right now just what in God's name is going on here. Is this some sort of sick joke? I want to blow the brains out of both of you where you stand," he bellowed. "Sam, go get the blankets from the car. I'll explain," one man said as Sam nodded and left. "Sir, please understand, we're no monsters. You see, this is our brother," he began fretfully, looking at the mangled creature in the wall. "Your brother? You sick degenerates locked up your own brother in the wall?" My great-grandfather cried out, placing a hand on his queasy stomach. "Never, sir, never," said the man. "My father just passed. We never knew this poor boy existed our whole entire lives. My other brother and I. No, it would seem our brother here was born with some sort of mental retardation, something that my father and mother couldn't handle as parents, so they chose to do the unthinkable rather than face the public with their shame," he explained, motioning for the shell of the man. Mind you, this story takes place in a time when something like mental defect was seen as a terribly embarrassing thing. My grandfather held his head. He looked at the dead man in the attic, then back to the stranger. "Get this thing out of my house. Send someone over to patch up your mess, and then never, ever come back near my family again. You hear me?" he ordered. "You can rely on that, sir. We had not wanted to bother you in the first place, but we couldn't sleep at night knowing some poor family was stuck with him, living up in your walls, you see. He probably was sucking moisture from the ceiling and eating bugs and mold, I would think. It's amazing he could have survived." My great-grandfather solemnly said nothing. He only watched as Sam returned and the two men bundled their strange, demented and dead brother, leaving with a courteous thank you, followed by a repairman and a generous fruit basket a day later. When my great-grandmother asked what happened, my great-grandfather could not bear telling her. "Rats," he said. "Just rats.